Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere hot, wet, and crawling with things that want to bite you, shoot you, or both. It's a world of mud, monsoon rains, and the constant hum of insects, where your best night's sleep might be in a hole you dug yourself and your alarm clock could be incoming artillery. We're diving into what it was really like to be a Vietnamese soldier during the Vietnam War. Forget the action movie gunfights and the slow motion hero shots. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a week out there, and some didn't even make it through the first day. So before we wade into the thick of it, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I don't need pity clicks, just the people who want to be here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I still love seeing the mix of night owls, early birds, and people who really should be sleeping but decided to hang out here instead. Now, turn down the lights, maybe put on a fan for that constant low drone in the background, because that sound will fit right in with where we're going, and ease yourself into the thought that you've just been dropped into 1967, somewhere in the dense green chaos of the Vietnamese jungle. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, so is everything else. From the swarms of mosquitoes to the guy out there right now who's been told you're the enemy. You're wearing a uniform that already feels like it's glued to your skin. You smell like a mix of gun oil, sweat, and wet socks. And you have no idea how long it's been since you were truly dry. The air feels thick enough to chew, and somewhere in the distance there's a faint pop that could be fireworks. Except, you know it isn't. You're not in a barracks with a neat row of bunks. You're crouched in a foxhole, barely deep enough to protect you. The damp earth sticking to your elbows and knees. Above you, the canopy hides the sky, trapping the heat, the smell, and the sound. You can't see far, but you hear everything. The rustle of leaves, the high-pitched whine of mosquitoes, the faint drip of water from yesterday's rain still making its way down the vines. Somewhere out there is the enemy, and somewhere closer, maybe even inside your boots, are a couple of leeches who've decided breakfast is served. And this isn't the bad part yet. This is the good morning. This is the part before you start marching, before you hear gunfire, before the real exhaustion sets in. Because here, the day never gets easier. It just changes the way it tries to break you. You wake up before the sun's even thought about showing itself, because in this place, daylight isn't your alarm. Everything else is. The ground beneath you is damp, soft enough to leave an imprint of your ribs, but not soft enough to call comfortable. Your bed is just a shallow hole you dug yourself the night before, lined with whatever leaves or scraps you could find, which, by morning, are either stuck to your skin or halfway decomposed. Above you, there's a piece of camouflage netting that pretends to hide you from anyone looking down, but mostly just traps heat and makes the air feel like a slow cooker. The smell hits you before the sound does. Mud, wet socks, stale sweat, gun oil, and something faintly metallic that you hope is just rust and not blood. Then the noise starts up again, like the jungle is hitting an invisible switch. Insects first. A constant, high-pitched whine that never really stopped overnight, just dipped low enough for you to forget until now. Then the chirps, the croaks, the occasional rustle of something moving in the undergrowth that's either a lizard or something that could take your foot off. You breathe in, and it's like inhaling through a wet towel. Thick, humid, heavy. It makes your lungs feel like they're working double shifts. You don't stretch, not because you don't want to, but because you don't want to shift too much and alert someone watching you. The jungle has eyes, not the friendly kind. Somewhere out there, in the same sticky darkness you just blinked awake into, another soldier might be lying in wait, thinking about how to take you out before you even finish your first mouthful of rice today. The paranoia isn't paranoia here, it's survival. Your boots, which you left on because taking them off just means something will crawl in, are now twice as heavy as they were yesterday. You don't even have to check to know they're wet. Everything is wet. Your socks, your shirt, your skin. It's a permanent state. You've stopped hoping for dry and started grading things on a scale from slightly damp to can wring water out of it. Your uniform, stiff in places from old sweat and dirt, is already sticking to you in all the wrong spots. The fabric is thin enough to breathe, but thick enough to hold every drop of moisture against your skin, like a clammy handshake you can't escape. You glance at the man next to you. He's not sleeping. No one sleeps fully out here. His eyes are half-lidded, but he's still alert enough that if something moved in the brush, he'd snap up. That's what passes for rest. Short bursts of shut-eye, while your brain stays awake enough to remind you you're not safe. You nod to each other. The kind of silent greeting that says, "You still alive? Good enough." Breakfast isn't even a thought yet. First comes checking your weapon, because the jungle isn't just a battlefield. It's a gun's worst nightmare. Moisture, dirt, and rust want to ruin your rifle faster than the enemy does. You tilt it slightly, checking the chamber, feeling the faint grit of yesterday's mud clinging to it like it's paid rent. You'll have to clean it again, probably later today, definitely tonight. If you don't, it won't matter how good your aim is. A jam in the middle of a firefight is just another way to die. The ground around you isn't just mud, it's alive. Ants crawling over your fingers, mosquitoes zeroing in on every inch of exposed skin, and the occasional leech you find only after it's gotten comfortable and had a drink. You don't scream when you pull one off. You don't even flinch. You just rip it away, smear the blood it leaves behind, and move on. Because here, being disgusted wastes time you can't spare. You listen, because sound is everything. The rustle of leaves can mean wind, an animal, or a person. You've learned to tell the difference, though the jungle likes to play tricks, making a bird call sound like a whispered order in the distance. Sometimes the enemy will use it too, copying the noise of a common bird to signal each other. Out here, silence isn't quiet. It's suspicious. Your body aches in places you didn't even know had muscles before you got here. The weight of your gear presses into your shoulders, the straps digging into skin that's already rubbed raw. You carry your rifle like it's part of you because it has to be. Alongside it, you've got grenades, spare magazines, a canteen full of water you're half afraid to drink, and a few crumpled packets of rations. Every ounce counts, but nothing is light when you're moving through air this thick. The day's already starting to heat up, though technically the sun hasn't made it past the treetops yet. By noon, it'll be like standing inside a furnace someone forgot to turn off. You've heard guys talk about wanting the sun to come out because they're tired of the rain. That's a rookie mistake. Sun here doesn't dry you, it just makes you sweat more, makes your clothes stick tighter, and cooks you in your own uniform. You shift slightly, trying not to make noise, because the roots beneath you are pressing into your hip. The ground here is never even. There's always something digging into you, poking at your ribs, reminding you that comfort isn't part of the deal. You think about the last time you slept in an actual bed and realise you can't remember the feeling. That was another life, one where mornings didn't come with the possibility of stepping on a landmine before breakfast. Somewhere to your left, there's a low murmur. Two of your squad mates exchanging a few words. No one talks loud out here. Voices carry in strange ways in the jungle, bouncing off trees, getting swallowed up by vines, or suddenly sounding much closer than they are. The air is deceptive, and so is distance. You could hear someone chopping wood and think they're a mile away, only to find them 50 yards ahead. Your stomach growls, but you ignore it. Hunger is just part of the background noise now, same as the insects and the heat. When food comes, it comes. When it doesn't, you deal with it. Out here, nobody's counting calories for health. They're counting them for survival. You take a small sip from your canteen, just enough to wet your mouth without draining too much. The water's warm, has a faint chemical taste, and might still be questionable even after the purification tablets. But thirst will kill you faster than whatever's in it, so you drink. There's movement above, a branch shifting, leaves parting slightly, and your grip tightens on your weapon without you even thinking. Turns out it's just a monkey, staring down at you with that casual, unblinking curiosity only animals have. You've learned not to assume the wildlife is harmless. Monkeys have been known to give away positions, whether on purpose or just because they're loud little nuisances. You watch it for a second until it moves off, and the canopy swallows the sound. Every second you spend here, you're aware of how exposed you are. Even in a hole, even undercover, you're in someone else's territory. The jungle isn't yours, it's theirs. The terrain works for them, hides them, feeds them. You're just trying to get through it without becoming another story someone tells about the guy who didn't make it back. You glance at the faint outline of the path ahead, if you can even call it that. More like a series of spaces between trees where it's slightly easier to walk. That's where you're heading when the word comes. For now, you wait. You swat at a mosquito. You shift your rifle in your lap. You try not to think about the fact that this is only the first few minutes of the day, and there are at least 14 more hours before you get to dig another hole, crawl into it, and start this whole process again. You hear a faint metallic click somewhere behind you. Someone adjusting their gear, and you know it won't be long before you're on your feet, wading through vines and mud again. The jungle feels like it's breathing around you, every leaf dripping, every branch shifting just enough to keep you guessing. You're already sweating, your boots already feel heavier, and you haven't even taken your first step yet. Last night, when you stopped moving for the day, you didn't go inside somewhere warm and dry. You didn't even have 4 walls to lean against. You dug a hole in the ground, scraped it out with a small entrenching tool until it was just deep enough that if you curled yourself into it, the top of your head was below ground level. That's your bed. A foxhole. It's not some tidy little square like you see in training manuals. Out here, the ground isn't cooperative. Roots as thick as your wrist snake through the soil, forcing you to dig at awkward angles. Rocks wedge themselves exactly where your elbow wants to rest. The dirt crumbles in places, holding together just enough until the next heavy rain turns it into a soup that you'll wake up lying in. There's no finished foxhole. There's only good enough for tonight. You try to line it with whatever you can find. Banana leaves if you're lucky, grass if you're desperate. But it never really helps. By the time you've laid them out, they're already damp from the air, and after a few hours, they're flattened into a slick green paste that sticks to your skin. Sometimes you find a scrap of canvas or an old poncho to lay down, but even that just turns into another wet layer under you. Sleeping in the ground isn't about comfort, it's about not being a target. You want as much of you below the surface as possible so that if someone sprays the tree line in the middle of the night, you're harder to hit. That's the theory. In reality, you're still exposed to shrapnel, to mortars, to anything that drops in from above. But whole feels better than nothing. When the rain comes, and in the monsoon season it always comes, you don't just get wet, you get submerged. Water pools in the bottom of your hole, soaking through your clothes from below while the sky dumps more on top of you. You can't stretch your legs because there's no space. You can't roll over because the walls are right there. You curl up, knees pressed against your chest, rifle balanced awkwardly so it stays out of the mud, and you just endure it. And the bugs. God, the bugs don't care if you're armed. Ants will find their way in by the hundreds, marching over your body like they own it. Beetles the size of matchboxes crawl into your gear. Spiders drop in from above, land on your chest, and skitter away before you can swat them. Mosquitoes don't even wait for you to settle down. They hover in your face the second you stop moving, whining in your ears, finding every gap in your uniform. The repellent helps for about 10 minutes before your sweat washes it away. The smell of your foxhole is a mix of everything you've tracked in: mud, mould, gunpowder residue, your own sweat, and whatever organic matter was already there. Sometimes that means rotting leaves. Sometimes that means something dead you didn't notice until it started to smell. You tell yourself it's just a bird. You don't check to be sure. When you close your eyes, you can still feel the uneven earth pressing into your bones. Every twitch, every shift, sends a little cascade of dirt down your collar or into your boots. Your back aches from the angle. Your neck cramps from trying to keep your head tilted in a way that doesn't press your face into the wall. You might get 2 hours of real sleep in a night, broken up into 20-minute chunks when your brain decides it's safe enough to relax before snapping you awake again at the faintest sound. And that faint sound could be anything. A branch snapping in the distance, a burst of wind moving the leaves, or it could be a man crawling toward you with a knife in his teeth. You don't get to assume it's nothing. You grip your rifle, you listen, and you let your eyes adjust to the shadows until you're sure. That's why no one sleeps deep out here. The foxhole isn't a bed, it's a waiting room. In the dry season, the ground bakes and cracks, leaving sharp edges that cut into your hands as you dig. In the wet season, it turns to a slop that clings to everything, coats your skin, gets into your rations. The walls sometimes collapse in the middle of the night, dumping half a load of mud onto your legs. You just dig it out, shift over a few inches, and keep lying there. If you're lucky, you share the hole with a buddy. Not because it's roomy. 2 people in a foxhole means knees jammed into ribs and elbows in faces. But because you can take turns staying awake. One keeps watch, while the other gets a few minutes of rest. It's the closest thing you'll get to feeling secure. Alone, every noise sounds closer. With someone else, you can at least pretend there's time to react. Sometimes, if you're near a base or a temporary camp, You'll get to sleep in something like a bunker. Wooden planks reinforcing the sides. Maybe a bit of sandbag cover above. That's luxury. That's the jungle equivalent of a hotel room. You still smell, you're still damp, you're still in danger, but you don't wake up with your arm half buried in mud. The foxhole makes you appreciate even that. When the morning comes, you don't get out of your bed. You climb out of it like you're dragging yourself up from the grave. Your legs are stiff. Your back feels like you've been sleeping on a bundle of sticks. And your uniform is twice as heavy from the moisture it absorbed overnight. You shake off leaves and dirt, check your weapon again, and start the day already tired. That's the part no one tells you. Out here, you never really start fresh. You just keep carrying the exhaustion forward. The hole you slept in last night will probably be abandoned by the time you return. If you return, it'll fill with water, with mud, with leaves. It'll vanish back into the jungle like it was never there, leaving nothing to show you ever occupied that patch of earth, except maybe a few spent shell casings and a boot print that will wash away in the next rain. Then you dig another one, because out here, sleep isn't about rest. It's about making it to the next day without giving someone an easy shot. You glance over at the patch of ground you just crawled out of, and you already know tonight you'll be digging again, somewhere else. The earth doesn't care if you're tired. The war doesn't either. You just find another spot, put your entrenching tool to work, and carve out your next temporary piece of safety. And while you're thinking about where that will be, you hear someone say it's time to move, which means it's time to think about how to survive the next few hours without ending up in a hole you can't climb out of. You're up now, though up is generous. It's more like you're vertical because you have to be, not because your body wanted to cooperate. Your knees are still protesting from being folded in that hole all night. Your back feels like it's been sandpapered, and your eyes burn from the combination of fatigue and the fine grit of dirt stuck in your lashes. There's no morning stretch, no lazy yawn, no wandering into a kitchen to grab coffee. Out here, the first thing you do is check if everything that matters is still attached. Your gear, your weapon, your boots. And then you check the perimeter with the same suspicion you'd give a stranger walking toward your car in the dark. Hygiene isn't about freshening up, it's about damage control. Your face feels tacky from dried sweat. You reach for your canteen, not to drink yet, but to splash a little water into your hands and swipe it over your face. The water's warm, metallic tasting, and the smells faintly of iodine from the purification tablets you dissolved in it yesterday. If you're unlucky, the tablets didn't dissolve all the way, and you get that bitter, chalky tang clinging to your lips. You spit, but it doesn't help much. That's as close to washing up as you'll get before you move out. If you've got time, and sometimes you don't, you light up a cigarette. Not because it's relaxing, but because nicotine wakes you up in a way the jungle's humidity never will. You cup the match with both hands, hiding the flame from view, because a flicker of light can be seen for yards in the pre-dawn dark. The first drag burns a little, a reminder your lungs are already working overtime just to breathe this air. The smoke mixes with the damp smell of the jungle, with the faint scent of gun oil, with the lingering reek of last night's sweat. Out here, you don't smell bad or good, you just smell like everything around you. Earth, decay, powder, and smoke. You check your weapon again, because you always check your weapon again. The jungle's already tried to ruin it once overnight. You're not giving it a second chance. You pull the bolt back just enough to see that the chamber's clear and ready. The motion's automatic now. Muscle memory from doing it over and over. You run a cloth over the metal, feeling the faint drag where condensation has settled. A few drops of oil, a quick wipe, and it's ready for now. In this climate, ready lasts maybe an hour before the next cleaning. There's no breakfast buffet waiting. Someone passes you a small bundle, cold rice wrapped in banana leaf if you're lucky, a handful of dried fish if you're not. You eat without talking, without ceremony, because food here isn't about taste. It's fuel, and you take what you can get before it's time to move. You pick out a couple of tiny bones from the fish, spit them into the dirt, and chew the rest slowly, washing it down with another cautious sip from the canteen. You want to save as much water as possible, but the dry, salty mouthful forces your hand. While you eat, you scan. You're not looking for anything specific, just movement, changes in the soundscape, anything out of place. The jungle is noisy, and that noise is oddly comforting. It means things are as they should be. When it goes quiet, that's when you start worrying. Birds stop calling. Insects stop buzzing. You notice the silence and your stomach tightens because it rarely means anything good. You check your boots. You didn't take them off overnight, but you still tap the heel against the ground, just in case something decided to crawl in while you weren't looking. Out here, that's not paranoia, it's survival. A scorpion, a centipede, even a big spider can ruin your day in ways the enemy doesn't even have to get involved in. You wiggle your toes, feeling the soggy weight of socks that haven't been dry since you first put them on days ago. If you have a spare minute, you look at your feet. Not because you care about comfort, but because foot rot is an enemy of its own. The constant wet softens skin until it splits. And once infection sets in, you're in trouble. You peel your socks down just enough to see the pale, wrinkled flesh. Press a thumb into it to check if it's tender. If it's bad, you might swap socks, but only if you have a dry pair, which is rare. Around you, everyone else is doing the same dance. One guy is wiping his face with a rag that looks like it used to be part of a shirt. Another's crouched over his weapon, breaking it down for a quick clean. A third is squatting by the edge of the path, scanning the tree line while chewing something from a small packet. No one's chatting. It's too early for that, and too dangerous. Then there's the mental part of the routine, checking your own head. You think about where you're going today, what the terrain's like, whether you'll be passing through known danger zones. You remind yourself not to get sloppy, not to stop paying attention just because it's been quiet for a few days. Quiet is when the enemy waits. You sling your pack over your shoulder, feeling the familiar drag of its weight. It's not heavy by civilian standards, maybe 40 pounds, but in this heat, in this humidity, it might as well be a truck. The straps dig into your collarbone, and you shift them slightly to a position that will be comfortable for the first 100 steps before the ache sets in again. You run through your gear in your head. Rifle, ammo, grenades, water, rations, first aid kit, extra socks, maybe a few personal items if you're lucky. Nothing you can't carry, nothing you can't ditch if you have to move fast. Every ounce counts, because every ounce will punish you by the end of the day. The squad leader gives a low hand signal, and you know it's time to move. Cigarettes get stubbed out in the dirt. Canteens get capped. Packs get tightened. You fall into line, spacing yourself just far enough from the man in front of you so that if one of you steps on a mine, the other might have a chance. That's part of the routine too. Thinking about things you'd never think about anywhere else. The path ahead is barely a path, more a suggestion of where to place your feet between the tangles of vines and the low-hanging branches. The air is thick enough to make you sweat after 3 steps. You can already feel the first bead rolled down the back of your neck. The day hasn't even started, but you know you'll be soaked through before the hour's up. You adjust your grip on your rifle, keep your eyes moving, and remind yourself that in this place, survival isn't one big decision. It's 1,000 tiny ones you have to make right, over and over, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you try to close them again, and sometimes even in between. Somewhere ahead, the jungle opens just enough to let in a shaft of sunlight. It lights up the steam rising from the damp ground, making it look almost peaceful. But you know better than to take it that way. Peace here is an illusion, and you've already got the sweat dripping into your eyes to prove it. Breakfast isn't something you look forward to out here. It's not pancakes, bacon and coffee. It's not even a guaranteed event. It's whatever's in your pack, or whatever the squad can scrounge before it's time to move again. You might go days without what most people would even call a meal. Out here, breakfast is just a word that means put something in your stomach before it starts eating itself. If you're lucky, and by lucky I mean the supply lines haven't been cut, you get rations. For the Vietnamese soldier, that usually means a tightly packed bundle of cold rice, maybe a pinch of salt if someone thought ahead, and if fortune's really smiling, a bit of dried fish or meat. The rice is usually wrapped in banana leaves, which sounds nice until you realise it's not for flavour. It's just the only packaging you've got. You untie the string, peel back the leaf, and there it is. A dense, sticky block of rice that's been compressed until it could probably be used as building material. If you're unlucky, it's just the rice. No protein, no extras. And if you're really unlucky, it's rice that's been sitting a bit too long in this humidity, just starting to go sour. You eat it anyway, because not eating means having even less energy for the day ahead. You pinch off a lump with your fingers, pop it in your mouth, and chew slowly. It sticks to your teeth, your tongue, the roof of your mouth. You chase it with a sip of warm, iodine-flavoured water, not because you're thirsty, but because you need the help to get it down. Sometimes there's a piece of dried fish tucked into the rice. It's thin, salty, and tough enough to give your jaw a workout. The salt is good. You sweat so much out here that without it, you'd cramp up before midday. The downside is the fish tastes exactly like something that's been drying in the open air for days. The smell clings to your hands no matter how many times you wipe them on your pants. If you're feeling fancy, you might wrap a bit of the fish in the rice and pretend you're eating something more than just survival fuel. Every now and then, you get something different. Maybe a scrap of dried pork if someone's family sent a care package. Maybe a boiled egg if you've passed through a friendly village. These are rare enough that you remember them for weeks afterward, talking about that one morning you had real food, like it was a story worth telling around a fire. Of course, the jungle has its own menu, and sometimes breakfast is whatever you can find. That might mean foraging for edible plants, shooting a bird if you've got the time and ammo to spare, or trapping something small overnight. But foraging takes time, hunting makes noise, and traps don't always pay off. More often than not, it's back to rice, dried fish, and whatever imagination you can apply to make it seem like anything else. The worst mornings are the ones after you've been moving all night. You didn't stop to sleep, which means you didn't stop to eat either. You start the next day already running on fumes, the emptiness in your gut gnawing at you while your legs still have miles to cover. You might dig into your rations mid-march, squatting in the mud for 30 seconds to shove a handful of rice into your mouth before catching up with the squad. Cooking in the field is rare, but not impossible. If you've got a moment of safety, someone might light a small smokeless fire and heat water for tea or soup. Soup might be stretching the word. It's usually hot water with some chopped greens or wild herbs, maybe a scrap of meat if someone's got it. But after days of cold food, even that thin broth feels like a luxury. The problem is fires make smoke, and smoke makes you visible. Out here, a cooking fire is basically sending up a flare that says, "Shoot here." Your hands are never really clean when you eat. There's always a thin layer of grime, even after you splash water over them. The rice sticks to your fingers, and the dirt clings to the rice. You stop noticing after a while. Dirt is just another seasoning. You've eaten worse without realising it. And the bugs. Always the bugs. The second you unwrap anything, they're there. Ants, flies, mosquitoes. All drawn to the smell of food like it's the only thing they care about. You learn to eat fast, not to savour, because every extra second is another chance for something to land in your breakfast. And if it does, you might just eat it anyway, rather than waste time picking it out. There's no sitting in a circle and chatting while you eat. Everyone's too busy scanning the tree line, checking their gear, or shoveling food in before it's time to move again. You don't talk with your mouth full, because you're not talking at all. Breakfast isn't social, it's tactical. On the rare days you're in a secure enough position to eat without rushing, it almost feels wrong. And you sit there, chewing slowly, and your brain starts to notice the aches in your body, the weight of your gear, the dampness in your socks. You think about home, about the smell of fresh bread or hot soup, about flavours that aren't just salt and starch. And then you stop thinking about it, because that way lies distraction. And distraction out here gets you killed. By the time you've swallowed the last bite, you're already on your feet, tucking the banana leaf back into your pack to pack out later, or tossing it into the undergrowth. There's no clean up, no brushing crumbs off the table. The jungle takes whatever you drop, and you keep moving. Breakfast doesn't give you energy. It just keeps you from collapsing too soon. And as you start walking again, the weight in your stomach feels heavy, not satisfying. You know it won't last. By midday, you'll be hungry again, maybe hungrier, because the heat will burn through whatever you just ate in no time. But for now, you've done the morning's most important job. You've put something in your gut so you can keep going. And keep going is exactly what you're about to do, because the jungle ahead isn't getting any smaller, and you've still got a long way to go before you see another place to stop. Your breakfast is barely sitting in your stomach before it's time to check your gear one last time and make sure everything on you is where it needs to be. Dressing for war out here isn't about style, comfort, or even looking uniform. It's about whether what you're wearing will get you through the next 12 hours without falling apart, cutting you open, or cooking you alive. Spoiler, it's going to do at least two of those things. Your uniform is nothing fancy. For a Vietnamese soldier, it's usually a simple cotton or cotton blend shirt and pants in olive or green. Light enough to breathe, heavy enough to soak up sweat until it feels like you're wearing wet cardboard. When it's dry, it's rough against the skin. When it's wet, and it's always wet, it clings to you, like a second layer of skin you never ask for. Cotton was supposed to be breathable, but here, in this heat, it just traps the humidity against you and refuses to let go. The first few minutes after you put it on in the morning are the least bad. By the time the sun's properly up, the shirt is already sticking to your chest and back, your pants are glued to your thighs, and every step rubs damp fabric over the same raw spots you've been nursing for days. Chafing isn't an if here, it's a how bad. The salt from your sweat mixes with the constant friction and turns your skin into a permanent rash. You can shift your gear around, adjust your belt, tug at the seams, but it's only a matter of time before you're scratching at it between steps. The boots are another story. They're heavy, even without water in them, which is almost never the case. For the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong, boots were often made from recycled truck tyres. Durable, yes, but about as comfortable as strapping 2 slabs of rubber to your feet and hoping for the best. For South Vietnamese soldiers or those with better supply, you might get proper combat boots, but they still fill with water every time you wade through a stream or march in the rain, which is constantly. You don't just put them on, you brace yourself for the moment your feet slide back into something that hasn't been dry in weeks. Socks are a precious commodity. The lucky ones have a couple of pairs to rotate, most don't. Wet socks mean soft, broken down skin, which means blisters that pop and turn into open wounds. You wrap your feet in cloth if you have to, or you just push through and try not to limp. Limping draws attention. Out here, moving slow can get you killed faster than anything. Then there's the belt. It's not just holding your pants up, it's holding your life together. Ammo pouches, a canteen, maybe a small first aid kit, sometimes a sidearm if you're issued one. Every extra pound hanging off it digs into your hips as you walk, and the belt itself has a habit of riding up or twisting just enough to grind into your lower back. You keep it tight because loose gear rattles, and noise here is an invitation. If you're carrying grenades, they hang off your chest rig or belt in a way that always seems to catch on vines. Every time you bend over, they knock into your ribs. You ignore it, because the alternative is not having them when you need them. The chest rig itself is another layer of fabric to trap heat, and it rubs against your shoulders until you've got deep grooves in your skin. Some soldiers wear a scarf or bandana around the neck, partly to wipe sweat, partly to keep insects off, partly just out of habit. The scarf ends up soaked within an hour, its damp weight against your collarbone doing nothing to help the heat. But you keep it anyway, because even a small barrier between you and the bugs is worth it. The helmet, if you have one, is heavy and never quite fits right. Sweat runs down from under the rim and drips into your eyes, stinging them, and you can't push it up without risking it catching the light. Many North Vietnamese soldiers skipped helmets altogether, favouring lighter soft caps, but those offered no real protection against shrapnel or debris. Either way, your head ends up hot and itchy, and you scratch under the edge when no one's looking. By the time you're fully dressed and loaded down with gear, you feel like you've already done a workout. Every strap digs somewhere, every seam rubs. You shift your rifle from hand to hand, adjusting the sling so it doesn't cut into your shoulder too soon. You don't think about how much you're sweating. It's constant, and there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing you think about is how to keep moving without the gear becoming the thing that takes you out before the enemy does. You glance down the line. Everyone looks the same. Uniforms stained dark in patches from sweat. Boots caked in mud. Faces set in that blank, half-alert expression that means they're already bracing for the day ahead. No one's comfortable. No one ever is. The best you can hope for is tolerable, and even that doesn't last long. The squad leader gives a small wave, and the line starts to move. You step forward, the damp weight of your uniform settling around you like a reminder that this isn't about comfort. It's about lasting long enough to see another day, another breakfast, another chance to climb out of another hole in the ground. The heat's already building, and the day hasn't even hit its stride yet. You've barely taken 10 steps before the reality of this place starts reminding you that it isn't just trying to wear you down, it's trying to wreck the only thing that keeps you alive. Your rifle isn't just a tool, it's the difference between making it home and ending up face down in the mud. And the jungle hates rifles. It hates moving parts, hates clean metal, hates anything that's supposed to work in a predictable way. Out here, weapon maintenance isn't a chore you do once in a while. It's a full-time battle you fight alongside the actual war. The air alone is enough to start the war against your weapon. The humidity is thick enough to bead moisture on metal within minutes. 1 second your rifle's fine, the next it's slick with condensation. Leave it for a few hours without wiping it down, and you'll see rust spots starting like the jungle's growing its own little colonies on your barrel. It doesn't matter if it's an AK, an M16, a bolt-action relic. Out here, all guns are equal victims. Every soldier develops their own rhythm for keeping it in shape. You check it constantly. Wipe it down with a rag that's never truly dry. Run the cleaning rod through the barrel whenever you stop for more than a few minutes. Oil it sparingly. Too much oil just collects dirt and grit until the action feels like it's full of sand. Too little, and you'll hear that ugly metal on metal scrape the next time you pull the bolt back. Mud is the real enemy. Step wrong and slip knee-deep into a hidden puddle, and you're spending the next hour stripping your rifle down, scooping muck out of the receiver with your fingernail, and praying you didn't miss any. Even a little dry dirt in the wrong place can jam it when you need it most. You think about how, back home, you'd never treat a piece of machinery like this, but back home doesn't have vines slapping you in the face while you're trying to check a firing pin. Then there's the rain. Out here, rain doesn't fall. It pours in sheets that soak you to the bone in seconds. You try to shield your rifle under your arm, or wrap it in oilcloth, but if you're moving, you can't keep it dry. The water runs into every gap, drips down into the magazine well, and pools inside the action. You can clean it 100 times, and still find damp spots days later. Some soldiers keep a rag tied to their sling so they can wipe it down without digging through their pack. The rag's always damp, but it's better than nothing. You get used to working by feel, checking that the safety's not jammed, the magazine's seated right, the bolts smooth. You do it without thinking, like a reflex, over and over every few minutes. There's no luxury of a workshop or a proper bench. Your work surface is whatever you can clear. A flat rock, the top of your pack, your own lap while crouching in the mud. You lose track of how many times you've dropped a spring or a pin into the undergrowth and spent the next 10 minutes on your knees combing through leaves like you're panning for gold. Lose the wrong part, and your rifle becomes a very heavy club. The jungle has its own way of finding weak points. Vines snag slings, branches catch on the charging handle. Fine, powdery dirt gets into the smallest gaps and grinds at the metal until you can feel the resistance with every pull. Even the sweat from your own hands is a problem. Salt eats away at the finish, leaving little spots that corrode faster than the rest. Gloves help, but they get soaked too. And once they're wet, they just make everything slippery. And you're not maintaining it in a quiet, clean environment. You're doing it while you're tired, hungry, and constantly aware that at any second someone could open fire on you. You learn to strip and reassemble it fast, not for efficiency's sake, but because the longer it's apart, the more chance something nasty falls into it. The rifle never leaves your side. You sleep with it in your hands, across your chest, or leaning against the wall of your foxhole where you can grab it instantly. Even then, you wake up in the night and check it by touch, making sure the sling's still where it should be, the magazine's still locked. It's the first thing you pick up in the morning, the last thing you put down at night. Out here, you don't own the rifle owns you. You've heard stories of soldiers who didn't take it seriously. Guys who skipped a cleaning because they were too tired, or because it looked fine, or because they thought they'd be safe for a while. Those stories usually end with the same sentence: his gun jammed when he needed it. Nobody tells you the rest, because they don't have to. You can fill in the ending yourself. So you keep wiping, keep oiling, keep checking, even when your arms ache from carrying it all day. The war doesn't pause so you can fix a jam, and the jungle doesn't care if you're careful. It will keep trying to ruin your weapon as long as you're in it, which means you'll keep fighting both wars, the one with the enemy and the one with the climate, until you're out of here or you're out of luck. And while you're running that last patch through the barrel, someone calls for the squad to move out again. You sling it over your shoulder, feel the weight settle into its familiar spot, and start walking into the green wall ahead. You don't even have to think about it. You'll be checking it again in another 5 minutes, just like always. The line starts moving, and you fall in without a word. The jungle doesn't make room for you. You force your way through it one slow, deliberate step at a time. The path isn't really a path. It's more like a slightly less tangled stretch of vegetation where other boots have crushed enough leaves to make a faint suggestion of direction. Sometimes the guy in front disappears into the green, and you follow the sound of movement more than the sight of him. Your first few steps aren't bad. You're still fresh from the morning routine, your legs have loosened up a bit, your pack's weight hasn't fully sunk into your shoulders yet. But within minutes, the heat grabs you like a damp blanket wrapped around your entire body. The air feels heavier the deeper you go. You sweat without even trying, beads running down your forehead, into your eyes, soaking into your shirt until the fabric clings like glue. The canopy above blocks out most of the sunlight, so you walk in this strange, dim light, the kind where shadows seem to move even when nothing's there. Every few steps, a vine whips against your arm or neck. Sometimes it's just a leaf brushing you. Sometimes it's fawned, leaving a thin line of blood that the sweat quickly stings. The undergrowth pushes back at you constantly. Bamboo stalks, thick ferns, branches that snap back into the next guy's face. It's not just tiring, It's irritating in a way that wears you down before you even notice it's happening. Every sound matters. The rhythmic crunch of boots on soft earth, the click of a rifle sling settling, the faint slosh of water in someone's canteen. Somewhere nearby, the buzz of insects gets louder, higher pitched, until you realise they're swarming around your head. You swat without thinking, but the moment you stop, they're back. Then there's the footing. The ground changes every few yards. Soft mud that sucks at your boots, slick roots that threaten to take you down, sudden dips into shallow streams you can't see until you're ankle deep in brown water. Sometimes the mud grabs hard enough that you have to yank your foot out, the sucking sound loud enough to make everyone freeze for a split second, just in case it wasn't mud making that noise. The weight of your gear becomes a living thing after the first hour. Your shoulders ache, the straps cutting deeper into the muscle, your lower back twinging every time you shift. Your rifle sling bites into your neck, but carrying it in your hands for too long just makes your arms throb. You switch it back and forth, looking for the least painful option, but there isn't one. The pace isn't fast, but it's relentless. You move for 10 minutes, pause for 30 seconds, then move again. The stops aren't for rest, they're for listening. Every time the squad halts, you freeze in place, scanning the tree line, ears straining for anything that doesn't sound like the jungle. You don't want to hear silence, because silence means trouble. You don't want to hear voices either, unless they're the ones you know. Sometimes the terrain forces you to crawl. You drop to your hands and knees, rifle slung across your back, and worm your way through narrow gaps in the brush. The mud smears your arms and face, gets into your gear. Spiders drop onto you from above, not because they care about you, but because you've just disturbed the branch they were living on. You don't have time to freak out. You just brush them off and keep moving. The bugs never stop. Mosquitoes swarm your exposed skin, their whine a constant reminder you're in their territory. Leeches latch on when you cross wet ground, and you might not even notice until you feel the slow, warm trickle of blood down your leg. Pulling them off leaves a small open wound, just one more place for infection to start. You've given up trying to stay clean. You just try to stay functional. The smell of the jungle is a mix of damp earth, rotting vegetation, and sweat, yours and everyone else's. Occasionally, the breeze shifts, and you catch the sharp tang of something else. Sometimes it's gunpowder from a distant firefight. Sometimes it's decay from something dead nearby. You don't investigate. You just keep walking, because stopping without a reason is how you get left behind. Hours blur together. You lose track of how far you've gone or how long you've been walking. All you know is your feet hurt, your shoulders hurt, your head aches from the constant tension of scanning every shadow. The heat builds until you feel like your skin is cooking under your uniform, and then the clouds roll in and the rain starts. It's not a light drizzle. It's a wall of water that soaks you instantly, runs down into your boots, turns every step into a squelch. The mud deepens, the ground gets slicker, and every step takes twice the effort. The rain doesn't cool you down, it just adds weight. Your uniform clings tighter, your gear straps cut deeper, your rifle feels heavier. You squint against the water, running into your eyes, and keep moving, because no one stops for weather out here. The rain might even be worse, because it dulls your hearing, masks the sounds you'd normally pick up. You have to watch even harder now, because the enemy knows the rain can hide them as well as it hides you. Your legs start to feel like they're running on autopilot, your brain drifting in and out of focus. You snap back every time the guy in front raises a fist for the line to stop. You freeze, heart thudding, eyes scanning, waiting for the signal to move again. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you hear a distant burst of gunfire, muffled by the trees. Either way, you keep going, because there's no choice. The worst part isn't the heat or the mud or the bugs. It's the constant awareness that at any moment the jungle could erupt into chaos. 1 second you're trudging through vines, the next you're diving for cover. That tension never leaves you. It builds in your shoulders, in your jaw, in the back of your neck, until even standing still feels exhausting. By the time the squad finally pauses for more than a minute, you're drenched, sore, and already thinking about how much farther there is to go. This isn't even the end of the day. This is just the march. And the jungle's not done with you yet. You can walk for hours out here without seeing another human being, but you'll never be alone. The jungle is always touching you, crawling on you, biting you. It's not just uncomfortable, it's constant. Every few steps, something new finds its way onto your skin, your clothes, your gear, and no matter how many times you brush them off, they just keep coming. The mosquitoes are the first thing you notice. They're everywhere, all the time. The air hums with them, a high-pitched whine that gets inside your head until you can't tell if it's real or if you're imagining it. They don't just come at night. They're out in the heat of the day, in the middle of the rain, whenever they want. You swat one, and 2 more land in the same spot before you've even lowered your hand. They go for any exposed skin, hands, neck, face, but they're not shy about biting through your clothes either. The thin cotton of your uniform might as well be tissue paper to them. You can feel the sting as they pierce through, then the itch that flares up seconds later. You've got repellent, but it doesn't last. Sweat washes it off within an hour, and the jungle air takes care of the rest. Some of them carry malaria. Some carry dengue fever. You take the pills you're issued, but they're no guarantee. The pills taste like chemicals, make your stomach turn, and you have to choke them down with warm water that already tastes like iodine. Even with them, you still worry every time you get a headache or a fever that it's the start of something worse. Then there are the leeches. They're not the fat, sluggish kind you see in books. These are small, fast, and smart enough to find you without you finding them first. Cross a stream or step through wet grass, and they'll latch on without you feeling it. They work their way into your socks, up your legs, even under your belt. You don't notice until you see the streak of blood down your skin, or feel the slow drip inside your boot. Pulling them off isn't hard, but it's never clean. They leave a little wound that keeps bleeding, and out here, blood means 2 things. You're losing a little more of what you can't afford to lose, and you're leaving a scent trail in a place where that's never a good idea. The first time you find one, you feel disgust. After the 10th, you barely react. They're just part of the background now, like the mud and the heat. Ants are a different problem. You think they're harmless until you step on the wrong kind. Some bite, some sting, and some do both. Their trails crisscross the ground and climb every tree, and if you disturb them, they swarm fast. You can be walking 1 second and covered in them the next, slapping at your arms and legs as they bite through the thin fabric of your uniform. Then there are the spiders. Big ones with long legs that hang in webs across the trail. Small ones that vanish into your gear before you even see them. You learn to look up as often as you look down, because walking face first into a web means feeling something large and angry crawl across your skin. You try not to think about whether it's poisonous while you're brushing it away. Scorpions hide under rocks and in crevices, and sometimes in your boots if you leave them on the ground. You get in the habit of tapping your boots before you put them on, even if you slept with them on your feet. It's not paranoia, it's insurance. A sting can take you out of action for hours, and hours matter out here. The jungle has snakes too. Some are harmless, some aren't. You rarely get a clear look before they're gone, disappearing into the brush with barely a sound. You don't go poking around to find out which kind it was. The rule is simple. If it moves like a snake, you give it space. The bites, stings, and leech wounds don't heal fast. The humidity keeps everything damp, and dirt gets into every cut. Even a small scratch can swell up, turn red, and start leaking pus within a day. You clean them when you can, but clean here is a relative term. You just try to keep them from getting bad enough to slow you down. At night, the bugs don't go away, they just change. The mosquitoes get thicker. Moths the size of your hand flap against your face. Beetles land on you with a weight you can feel through your shirt. Some nights, you sleep with a net if you've got one, but the net doesn't stop everything. The jungle always finds a way in. You stop thinking about being comfortable. You stop thinking about getting rid of them entirely. Your goal shifts to managing it. Scratching without tearing skin, brushing leeches off before they drink too much, shaking bugs out of your gear every time you pick it up. You can't win against them, but you can make it a draw. Every step, every pause, every breath is shared with something that wants a piece of you. And the worst part is, they don't care who you are or what side you're on. The bugs aren't fighting the war. They're just part of the place. You're the outsider, and you're the one they're feeding on. By the time the squad stops again, you've got fresh bites on your neck, 2 leech marks on your ankle, and something small still moving inside your sleeve. You shake your arm hard enough to send it flying. Take another drink of warm chemical water and get ready to move again. The jungle's not done with you yet. The jungle never really goes quiet, but it knows how to change the pitch. You're used to the constant buzz of insects, the rustle of leaves, the occasional bird call. It's the background hum you've learned to live with. But when it shifts, when the birds go silent or the buzz drops, you feel it in your gut before you hear anything else. That's when the soundtrack changes from bugs and branches to something sharper, louder, and impossible to ignore. It doesn't always start with a bang. Sometimes it's a single dry crack in the distance, a rifle shot echoing between the trees, so faint you're not sure you really heard it. Sometimes it's closer, a sharp pop that makes everyone freeze in place. Other times there's no warning at all. 1 second you're pushing a vine out of your way, the next your ears are ringing, and the air around you is ripping apart. Explosions out here don't sound like they do in the movies. They're not neat. They're not cinematic. They're chaotic, ugly, and way too close. The first one hits like a punch to the chest. The sound doesn't just hit your ears, it goes through you. A deep, concussive thump that rattles your teeth and makes your vision twitch. Leaves and dirt rain down from above. You taste earth and metal in the back of your throat before you've even gotten low. You drop instantly because standing makes you a target and staying still makes you dead. You don't even think about it anymore. Your body just reacts. Your face hits the mud, your hands find the rifle, and you're scanning for movement before the echo has faded. Somewhere in the chaos, voices shout orders, but the sound swallowed by the next burst. Mortars are worse. You don't always hear them coming. Sometimes it's just a whistling drop, almost soft, almost harmless, and then the ground ahead of you bursts upward, sending shards of wood, rock, and metal spraying in all directions. You hit the dirt and curl in, trying to make yourself small, but you still feel the sting of tiny fragments hitting your arms and legs. If you're unlucky, it's not fragments, it's something bigger. Gunfire blends into the explosions like they were made to go together. Short bursts, long bursts, single cracks. They all sound different depending on the weapon, but in the moment, they're just signals that you're in it now. You pick out the direction as best you can, return fire if you see anything to shoot at, but mostly you're keeping your head down and your eyes open. The jungle twists sound. A shot from behind can sound like it came from ahead. An explosion to your left can echo from the right. You can't trust your ears completely, but you don't stop listening. You can't afford to. Sometimes it's an ambush. Sharp, quick, over in a minute, leaving nothing but smoke and silence. Other times it's drawn out. A series of bursts and blasts with minutes of tense waiting in between. You keep expecting the next one. Keep flinching every time a branch snaps. The smell changes too. The thick, damp air of the jungle gets cut through with the sharp bite of gunpowder, the acrid tang of smoke, the faint but unmistakable scent of burning. It mixes with the smell of churned earth, with the sweat pouring down your face, with the faint copper of blood if someone close to you has been hit. You stop thinking about the heat, the bugs, the chafing. Everything you were complaining about a minute ago is gone. Now it's just about not being where the next round lands. You push forward if ordered, you hold your ground if told, and you try to keep your breathing steady enough to hear what's coming next. When it ends, it doesn't feel like an end. There's no dramatic music fading out. It just stops, like someone cut the sound mid-track. The birds are still gone, the insects are still quiet, and your ears are still ringing. You stay low, because you know it might start again in 10 seconds, or in 30 minutes, or not at all. There's no schedule to it. The jungle slowly starts making noise again, piece by piece. A leaf rustles in the wind. A distant cicada buzzes. Someone near you shifts their weight, and you realise you've been gripping your rifle so hard your hands ache. You flex your fingers, wipe the sweat off your face, and get back in formation. And just like that, the soundtrack goes back to the hum of insects. But you know the explosions are still part of it. They can cut in at any moment, and when they do, you'll drop right back into the mud like you never left. When the shooting stops and the shouting dies down, the next thing that hits you isn't relief. It's hunger. The kind that sneaks up and wraps around your gut after hours of walking, sweating, and holding your breath through bursts of chaos. It's not the kind of hunger you can ignore with a sip of water or a stick of gum. It's the kind that makes you pull out whatever you've got left and eat it, no matter where you are or what it tastes like. Food out here isn't about flavour. It's about getting calories into you before you move again. You don't eat because you want to. You eat because if you don't, you'll start to feel that heaviness in your legs, that slow reaction time in your hands. And out here, slow is just another word for dead. If you're lucky, you've still got part of your ration from the morning. Cold rice, maybe some dried fish, or a scrap of meat wrapped in banana leaf. You crouch down in the mud, or sit on a log slick with rain, unwrapping it like you're opening a gift you already know is going to disappoint you. The rice is clumped together, sticky and dense, with the faint smell of the leaf it was wrapped in. The fish, if you've got it, is salty enough to make your mouth dry, the texture halfway between leather and wood. Sometimes you've got something canned, maybe sardines in tomato sauce, maybe condensed milk if supplies were generous. The sardines are oily, the sauce too sweet, but they slide down easy enough. The milk is thick and cloying, coating your mouth in sugar. It's strange to get something sweet after so much salt and starch, but you don't question it. Calories are calories. Foraging happens too. Maybe someone spotted wild greens or bamboo shoots along the way, hacked them down with a machete, and boiled them quickly in a battered pot if there's time. They don't taste like much, but the crunch feels good after days of soft, sticky rice. On rare days, you might get lucky and trap, or shoot something. Snake, bird, even a rat. The meat gets cooked fast, over a small, low fire, seasoned only with smoke and whatever you can rub on it. If you're desperate, you skip the cooking altogether. The jungle has fruit, but you have to know what's safe. Eat the wrong thing, and you'll be doubled over with cramps before the day's half over. Eat the right thing, and it's the closest thing to a treat you'll have. Mango, banana, papaya. They're out here, but not always where you are. And you don't wander off looking for them unless you're willing to risk meeting something with sharper teeth than you. Most meals are eaten fast, not because you're in a hurry, but because leaving food out is an invitation to trouble. The smell carries. Ants will swarm whatever you drop. Flies arrive in seconds, buzzing over your hands and face as you eat. Sometimes you wave them off. Sometimes you just keep chewing and let them land. Your hands are never clean. Even if you rinse them in a stream, there's always a layer of grime that doesn't go away. You eat with it anyway. Dirt gets under your nails, into the folds of the banana leaf, onto the rice. You stop noticing after a while. You've probably eaten worse without knowing it. Water is the hardest part. You can't wash food down with just anything. Streams and ponds look clean enough, but you know better. You stick to your canteen, even if the water inside tastes like chemicals. Sometimes it's warm enough to feel like you're drinking from a tea kettle, but it's safer than gambling on something that could put you in a fevered stupor for days. After you've eaten, you feel the brief weight of food in your stomach, a reminder you've done the bare minimum to keep going. It's not satisfying, you're not full, but the edge is gone, and that's what matters. You pack up whatever's left, stow the wrappers or leaves, and wipe your hands on your pants. The quiet that follows is never really quiet. Even when you're done eating, you're listening. You hear the others shifting, the faint click of a rifle being checked, the soft patter of water dripping from the canopy. The jungle doesn't care if you've just eaten. The war doesn't care either. You could be chewing your last mouthful when the next explosion hits. So you eat quickly, you eat without looking away from the tree line, and you get ready to move again. Because out here, food isn't a break. It's just another step in staying alive. The thing about eating out here is it always makes you thirsty. And the thing about being thirsty out here is you can't just fix it. Back home, thirst is an inconvenience. Here it's a gamble. Every sip you take is a calculated risk, because the water in this jungle doesn't just cool you down, it can drop you to your knees with fever, cramps and worse. You carry a canteen, maybe 2 if you're lucky, strapped to your belt where you can grab it without breaking stride. The water inside has already been treated with purification tablets, which means it tastes like you've dunked a rusty nail into a swimming pool. The smell hits your nose before it hits your tongue. A sharp chemical bite that makes you hesitate, even though you can't afford to. You drink it anyway, because the alternative is far worse. Out here, water is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You're surrounded by streams, ponds, and rainwater collecting in big leaves, but most of it's loaded with bacteria, parasites, or worse. You can look at a pool so clear you can see the bottom and still know that upstream a dead animal might be rotting in it. Or maybe someone dumped waste there an hour ago. Or maybe it's just been sitting long enough to become a breeding ground for every kind of sickness the jungle can throw at you. The safest bet is water that's been boiled, but boiling takes time, fire, and a place safe enough to stop. 3 things you rarely have all at once. You might get to do it if you're near a base or a hidden camp, but out in the field, most of your water comes from whatever you can fill your canteen with and treat on the move. Sometimes you can filter it through a cloth before adding tablets, catching the bigger chunks of dirt or insects. Sometimes you just scoop and swallow, because you can't stay in one place long enough to do anything else. Rainwater sounds like the easiest option. Just hold something out during a downpour and collect it. The problem is, the rain carries whatever it hits first, leaves, branches, animal droppings, straight into your container. And it's not like you can hold out a clean cup. Everything you own is already coated in mud and sweat. By the time you've got enough to drink, it's no safer than the stream. You've seen what bad water can do. A guy drinks from the wrong place, and by the next morning he's doubled over, sweating, shivering, unable to keep food down. Sometimes it's dysentery, sometimes it's something worse. Either way, out here, getting sick isn't just miserable, it's dangerous. You can't afford to be weak, and you definitely can't afford to lag behind. A bad case of waterborne illness can kill you outright, but it's more likely to get you killed because you can't keep up when it matters. The heat makes it worse. You're sweating all the time, losing water faster than you can replace it. Your mouth goes dry, your lips crack, your tongue feels thick. You think about your canteen constantly, weighing how much you've got left against how far there is to go before you can refill. You sip when you can, never gulp. If you're smart, you ration it so you don't end up staring at an empty container halfway through the day. Sometimes you have to drink from a bad source anyway. You crouch by the edge of a stream, fill your canteen, drop in the tablets, and shake it hard enough to mix. Then you wait. Not long enough for it to really be safe, just long enough for you to feel like you tried. You take the first mouthful with a grimace, tasting mud and chemicals, swallowing before you can think too much about what else might be in it. The worst is when the water's warm. It's not refreshing. It's like drinking weak tea made from sweat and dirt, but it's still better than nothing. You choke it down, wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, and keep moving. You stop thinking about clean water after a while. Out here there's just less likely to make you sick water. That's the best you can hope for. You drink it, you hope for the best, and you get back to watching the tree line. Because no matter how thirsty you are, the jungle won't wait for you to finish a drink. The rain doesn't just happen here, it moves in and takes over. In the monsoon season, it's not an occasional downpour. It's a wall of water that settles in for days, sometimes weeks, and turns everything into a wet, slippery, rotting mess. You don't wait for it to stop because it doesn't. You just keep moving through it until you forget what dry feels like. It starts with a change in the air. The heat doesn't go away, but the humidity shifts from bad to breathing through a soaked towel. The sky darkens, the jungle dims, and then the rain hits. Not drops, sheets. In seconds, you're soaked all the way through. Your uniform clings tighter than ever, plastered to your skin. Your boots fill up until every step squelches. You can feel the water slosh between your toes, but you keep walking because stopping doesn't help. The ground turns to mud almost instantly. Not the kind you can just scrape off, but the deep, sucking kind that grabs at your boots and tries to pull them off your feet. You take shorter steps, trying not to lose balance on the slick roots hidden under the surface. Every few yards, someone stumbles, catches themselves, and keeps going without a word. The rain drowns out sound. You can't hear much beyond the constant roar of water hitting leaves, splattering on your helmet, running down your pack. It's almost comforting until you remember it's masking every other noise you normally listen for. You could be walking straight into an ambush and not hear it until the first shot. Everything you own gets heavier. Your gear, your weapon, your pack. They all take on water like sponges. The straps dig deeper into your shoulders, the weight pulling at you with every step. Even your rifle feels different, the sling biting into your neck where the fabric's already rubbed raw. You wipe the rain from your eyes, knowing it'll be back in seconds. Resting doesn't help. There's no shelter, no dry spot to sit. You crouch under a tree, but the rain still comes through in big, cold drops that roll down your collar. If you're lucky enough to find a tarp or a bit of cover, it's already sagging under the weight of pooled water. The ground beneath it is just as wet as everywhere else. Sleeping in the rain is worse. You crawl into your foxhole, and it's already half full of muddy water. You try to bail it out with your helmet, but it's a losing battle. You end up lying in the shallow pool, shivering despite the heat, feeling the water seep through every layer you have. You keep your rifle propped up on the edge, praying it doesn't slip in with you. The constant damp works its way into your body. Your skin softens. Your feet wrinkle until they look like they've been soaking in a tub for hours. Blisters turn into open sores. Cuts never dry out, never heal, just stay red and angry. Your hands lose their grip from the wet, making every task harder. Loading a magazine, tying a strap, even holding onto your weapon. Food gets harder too. Fires are almost impossible to start, and if you do manage one, the smoke's a beacon. Most of the time, you just eat cold rations in the rain, the water dripping into your food as you chew. Everything tastes the same, wet. The rain finds its way into everything. Your pack, your ammo, even the inside of sealed pouches somehow ends up damp. Paper maps turn to pulp. Bandages get soggy before you can use them. The damp smell clings to you and your gear, a mix of mildew, sweat, and jungle rot. And it's not just physical. It wears on your head. Days of the same grey light, the same constant noise, the same unrelenting wetness start to blur together. You stop remembering what day it is. You stop expecting to feel the sun. You start to think you'll never be dry again, but you keep moving because there's no choice. The rain doesn't stop for you, and neither does the war. You walk until your legs ache, until the mud's caked up to your knees, until the water in your boots feels like it's part of you. Then you stop, dig another hole, and lie down in it, listening to the rain hammering the leaves above you until you drift into whatever shallow sleep you can get. When you wake up, it's still raining. Of course it is. You notice it before you even open your eyes. The rain's still falling, but underneath it there's another layer, thick, sour, and impossible to ignore. It's the smell. Not one smell, but a mix of everything that clings to you and everyone around you. Out here the air is heavy enough to hold it all in place, pressing it into your nose until you can't tell where you end and it begins. It starts with sweat. Days of marching in the heat, sleeping in damp clothes, never really washing, and you don't just smell like yourself anymore. You smell like the jungle's claimed you. It's not the sharp, salty sweat from back home after a run. This is deeper, sourer, soaked into the fabric of your uniform until no amount of rain can rinse it out. Even fresh rain just seems to wake it up, spreading it like steam rising off the ground. Then there's the mildew. Every piece of gear you own has been wet for longer than it's been dry. Packs, straps, boots, all of it's holding onto that wet, earthy rot that comes from being soaked and never given a chance to dry. The smell creeps in slow, but once it's there, it doesn't leave. You unzip a pouch and it hits you in the face, stale and clinging, like the jungle itself is trying to rot your gear down to nothing. Gunpowder is sharper. You smell it after every firefight. Burned, metallic, and acrid, cutting through the damp air like smoke through fog. It clings to your rifle, to your hands, to your uniform where the muzzle blast left a faint dusting of residue. Even after the fighting's over, it hangs in the air for a while, mixing with the rain until it's all you taste when you breathe. Then there's the smell you don't talk about much. Blood. Sometimes fresh, sometimes dried and crusted, sometimes half washed away by the rain, but still there in the fabric. The metallic tang settles in your throat, even when it's not yours. Out here, blood doesn't vanish. It just soaks in until it becomes part of the background, like the mud and the bugs. The jungle adds its own contribution. Rotting vegetation lies under every step you take, releasing that sweet, sickly smell as it's crushed underfoot. Fallen fruit rots in the undergrowth, drawing insects and leaving behind a faint fermenting scent that mixes with the stink of animal droppings. Sometimes you catch a whiff of something stronger, heavier, meat going bad. You don't go looking for the source. Smoke drifts in sometimes too, even when you're not the one making it. Somewhere far off, someone's burning something. Wood, gear, maybe worse. The wind carries it through the trees, and for a moment you can smell the village or camp it came from. It's a reminder that somewhere other people are living in the same mess, breathing in the same air, carrying the same stench with them. You can't get rid of any of it. Washing isn't an option most of the time, and even if you strip down in a stream, the moment you put your uniform back on, it's all still there. The smell is in the fabric, in your gear, in your skin. It's in the damp padding of your helmet, the leather of your boots, the canvas of your pack. It's on your hands, under your nails, ground so deep that even scraping with a knife won't make it go away. After a while you stop noticing it most of the time. It's just the air you live in. You only really register it when something changes, when the gunpowder's fresh, when the blood's still warm, when the rot is close enough to make your stomach turn. Those moments cut through the numbness, reminding you that this smell isn't just unpleasant. It's a map of everything you've done, and everywhere you've been since you got here. You wonder if, when you finally leave this place, you'll smell it on yourself even then. If you'll step into clean air and still catch that faint trace of mildew, sweat, and gunpowder in the back of your throat. You're not sure if it will ever leave. You're not sure you want it to. Not because you like it, but because it feels like part of the job now. Like part of who you've become. Someone nearby shifts their pack, the movement stirring up a fresh wave of damp, stale air. You take it in without flinching. The smell of war isn't something you escape. It's something you carry. Night in the jungle isn't quiet, it isn't calm, and it sure isn't rest. The air cools down only a little, just enough to remind you how damp you are, and then the dark moves in fast. There's no gentle sunset, just a slow dimming until the light dies and you're left with blackness so thick it swallows your hand even if you wave it inches from your face. The noises change. The day sounds fade, replaced by a chorus of things that only come out when the sun's gone. Frogs croak loud enough to sound mechanical. Insects drone in high-pitched layers that overlap until your ears start ringing. Somewhere off to your right, something splashes in water, heavy enough to make you picture something bigger than you want to meet in the dark. You don't stretch out and close your eyes like you would back home. Out here, sleep is a crouch, a curl, a half-sitting slump against the wall of your foxhole. Your rifle is always in your hands, or at least resting against your leg. You don't take your boots off, because the idea of putting wet, mud-filled socks back on in a rush at 3 a.m. is worse than the thought of sleeping in them. The ground is never comfortable. Even if you scrape it flat, roots push into your back, and the damp creeps through every layer between you and the earth. If you've dug a hole, the rain turns it into a shallow pond, soaking you from below while the humidity soaks you from above. You lie there, feeling the cold water seep into your clothes, listening to your own heartbeat and wondering how long until the next watch change. Bugs don't respect the fact that it's night. Mosquitoes get worse, swarming your face and hands, biting through your clothes. Ants crawl up your legs. Sometimes you feel something moving on you and slap at it before your brain even wakes up enough to figure out what it was. Other times you don't bother, because you've learned that as long as it's not biting, it's not worth wasting the energy. The worst is when your head starts to drift and you jerk awake again. Not because of noise, but because of silence. Out here, silence isn't peace. Silence means something's wrong. You sit still, ears straining, every nerve tight. The jungle might be holding its breath, or maybe you are, waiting for the snap of a branch, the distant click of a safety, the whisper of movement that shouldn't be there. Sometimes you get lucky and drift into something like real sleep. It's not deep, and it's not for long, but it's enough to pull you out of the moment. You dream in short, disjointed flashes, faces, places, bits of home. Then you're awake again, because someone nudged you for your turn on watch, or because your leg cramped from being stuck in the same position too long. Other nights, you don't sleep at all. You just lie there, blinking into the dark, counting the hours until first light. You think about how long you've been here, how many nights you've done this, how many more there might be. Your body aches for rest, but your mind refuses to shut off. Every sound could be danger. Every shadow a threat. And when the exhaustion finally gets heavy enough to win, the sun is already starting to push through the canopy and it's time to move again. When morning comes, you don't feel rested. You feel the same as you did the night before, wet, sore, and tired. But you get up anyway, because out here, night isn't for sleeping. It's just the part of the day when you can't see what's coming. Out here, you don't need to take a bullet to be in trouble. The jungle has 100 other ways to put you out of the fight, and every one of them can be just as bad. You can't afford injuries here. Not because they hurt, but because once you're hurt, you're slow. And slow gets you killed. It starts small. A blister from your boots that rubs raw after miles of marching. Back home, you'd slap a bandage on it and take a break. Here, you keep walking. The blister bursts, turns into an open sore, and the mud and sweat turn it into a festering mess by the next day. It stings with every step, but you can't stop. You lace your boots tighter, grit your teeth, and keep moving. Cuts are the same story. A thorn, a jagged piece of bamboo, the edge of your own gear. It doesn't take much to slice you open. The problem isn't the cut itself, it's what gets into it. Out here the dirt is alive. Every scratch is an invitation for infection, and the jungle always RSVPs. Without proper cleaning, a small cut can swell up overnight, skin turning red and hot, pus leaking out by the next morning. You can't go to a medic for every little thing. Half the time, you're your own medic, and all you've got is some iodine and a strip of gauze that's already been damp since the day you got it. Sprains are worse. One wrong step on a slick root or a hidden hole, and your ankle twists hard enough to send a flash of pain up your leg. You know right away it's bad, but you can't exactly wave your hand and call for a ride out. You walk on it, limp if you have to, because falling behind isn't an option. The swelling comes fast, making your boot feel tighter with every step, but you just keep moving. Your back takes a beating too. The constant weight of the pack digs into your spine, pulling at muscles that never get a chance to relax. One bad lift, one awkward twist in the mud, and you've got a pulled muscle that'll haunt every movement you make. There's no lying down to rest it. You just shift your gear, take another step, and try not to think about it. The heat adds its own set of injuries. Heat rash flares up in every place your skin rubs together. Your thighs, your armpits, your waist under the belt. At first it's just uncomfortable. Then it turns raw, weeping, and impossible to ignore. You move differently to ease the sting, but that only makes other muscles hurt. Then there's the constant threat of trench foot. Your boots are always wet. Your socks are always wet. You can change them if you've got spares, but within an hour they're soaked again. The skin on your feet softens, splits, and peels. The pain's sharp at first, then dull, then constant. It gets harder to walk, harder to think about anything but the burn with every step. The real danger is when something bad enough happens that you should stop, but you can't. A broken bone, a deep gash, a bullet wound that isn't instantly fatal. You get patched up as best as possible, maybe wrapped in bandages, maybe given a quick dose of painkillers if there's any to spare. Then you're back on your feet, because the squad can't carry you and still move fast enough to survive. There's no real recovery out here. Nothing heals the way it's supposed to. You're always moving, always sweating, always grinding dirt into every wound. Even sleeping doesn't help. Lying in the mud just makes it worse. You get used to carrying pain with you, the way you carry your rifle. It's just another weight. The worst part is knowing that any one of these injuries could end you without a single shot fired. Not because of the wound itself, but because it slows you down just enough for something else to catch you. Out here, pain isn't the problem. The problem is falling behind. When you get hurt out here, you start to realise real fast that medicine isn't the clean, white room kind you see in films. It's whatever you've got in your pack, whatever the medic can carry, and whatever you can improvise before the next move. The supplies are always limited, the conditions are never sterile, and half the time you're trusting that what you're taking will help more than it hurts. Every soldier dreams of having a trained medic nearby, but even when you do, they're not working with much. A small canvas bag that's been wet since the day it was issued, a few rolls of gauze already spotted with mildew, a couple bottles of iodine or mercurochrome that sting like fire when they hit skin. If you're lucky, there's morphine or some painkillers in a waterproof tube, but lucky is rare. Most of the time, the best you'll get for pain is being told to bite down on something and hold still. Antibiotics are gold out here. If the medic has them, he guards them like treasure. You might get a dose if your wound is bad enough, but most infections have to be fought with nothing but cleaning, wrapping, and hope. And cleaning is just a word out here. There's no real clean. Even boiled water might have come from a puddle 10 minutes ago, and the cloth used to wipe your wound was probably used for something else yesterday. For fevers and sickness, you get whatever's available. Maybe quinine for malaria, maybe chloroquine, maybe some bitter tablets that turn your tongue numb. They taste like they could strip paints, and they don't always work. Sometimes they just keep the fever from getting worse long enough for your body to handle the rest, if it can. If you get something worse, dysentery, typhoid, something that leaves you weak and curled up, the treatment is rest and fluids. Rest means lying in the mud with your rifle next to you. Fluids means the same warm, chemical-tasting water from your canteen. You try to sit between waves of cramps and hope your body keeps enough of it in to matter. Bandages run out fast. When they do, you improvise. Strips of shirt, scarf, or even leaves in a pinch. You bind wounds with whatever will hold, knowing it's not sterile, knowing it might make things worse later. But later isn't your problem if you can't make it through the day. Out here, a lot of medicine is just about stopping the bleeding, lowering the fever, or keeping the infection from taking over. It's not about making you whole, it's about keeping you alive enough to move. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it isn't. And when there's nothing left to give, no pills, no clean water, no bandages, the medic will just look at you and say to keep it covered and keep moving. You both know that's not really treatment. That's just hoping the jungle decides to let you slide this time. The truth is, you don't trust the medicine out here the way you would at home. You don't believe it will fix you. You believe it might help. And most days, that's as much as you can ask for. You get used to people out here. Not in the way you get used to friends back home. No inside jokes, no long talks about the future. But in the way you get used to the fact that they're always there. The same faces in the same formation. The same voice in the dark during a watch shift. The same figure up ahead when you're moving through the trees. You might not know everything about them, but you know how they walk, how they hold their rifle, how they breathe when they're tired. And then one day they're just not there. It happens fast sometimes. A firefight, an ambush, A single shot from somewhere you never saw. 1 second they're walking beside you. The next they're on the ground. You don't get a chance to stop. You don't get to check. You just keep moving because the squad is still under fire, and anyone who hesitates becomes the next body. Other times, it's not bullets, it's sickness. Someone who was fine yesterday starts shivering, sweating, barely able to stand. They can't keep food down, can't walk without help. You try to help anyway, but the march doesn't slow down for one person. If there's a way to evacuate them, maybe they get pulled out. If not, you keep walking and try not to think about what's happening behind you. And then there are the ones who vanish without warning. You wake up in the morning and their gear is gone. No one says anything. You don't know if they were reassigned, if they slipped away in the night, or if something happened and no one wants to talk about it. Out here, silence is its own answer. The worst part isn't losing someone in the moment. It's realizing later that you've stopped counting who's here and who's not. The group changes without announcement. You notice a gap in the line where someone used to be, or you catch yourself scanning faces and finding one missing. At first, you feel it like a punch. Then after a while, you stop feeling much at all. There's no time for funerals, no room for mourning. If someone goes down and can be carried, they're carried. If not, they're left where they fell. Maybe with a quick mark to find them later. Maybe not. You learn to walk past it because stopping won't bring them back, and will only risk adding another body to the ground. Sometimes you find yourself thinking about them in quiet moments. The way they adjusted their pack straps before a march. The sound of their laugh at something stupid someone said. The way they handled a weapon. You don't dwell on it long, because dwelling out here can get you killed, but it still creeps in. And then you move on. Not because you want to, but because you have to. The jungle doesn't stop for grief, and neither does the war. By the next day, someone else might be walking in their spot. By the next week, their name might not come up again. You tell yourself you'll remember them when it's all over, if it's ever over, but out here even that's not certain. The jungle isn't empty. Villages sit along narrow dirt paths, hidden clearings, or tucked beside rivers. You move through them sometimes on patrol, and they're not marked on any map that matters. One moment you're walking through thick green, the next you're stepping into an open space with huts on stilts, cooking fires, and people who look at you like they've been here for centuries, and like they wish you hadn't shown up. Civilians don't wear uniforms, but that doesn't mean they're not part of the war. Some help you, some help the other side. Some try to help no one at all, just to keep their families alive. You don't always know which is which, and that's the dangerous part. You might see farmers in the fields, bent low over the rice paddies with the same rhythm they've kept for generations, water up to their knees. They barely look at you as you pass. Sometimes you see kids playing in the mud, chasing each other with sticks, and it's almost easy to forget where you are. But then you spot the older boys standing apart, watching you without smiling, and you remember. The line between civilian and enemy is thin here, sometimes invisible. You pass a hut, and the woman outside nods politely. That night, someone in your squad swears they saw her guiding armed men through the trees. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's just paranoia. You don't get to find out for sure before the patrol moves on. The war changes everything for these people. Fields get torn up by boots and tracks. Houses burn, sometimes by accident, sometimes because someone decides they might be hiding weapons or supplies. Livestock disappears, taken to feed soldiers from one side or the other. A village you saw bustling one day might be empty the next, the fires cold, the paths overgrown, the silence heavier than the rain. You can't always tell when you're in the middle of something bigger. Sometimes you're told to search a village, and it feels routine, until you find a hidden tunnel, or a stash of rifles buried under the floor. Other times you search every hut and find nothing but pots, rice, and clothes drying on a line. Then you're left wondering if you just made enemies out of people who had nothing to do with the fight. The hardest part is when civilians get caught between both sides. You hear the gunfire first, then see people running, men, women, children, scattering through the trees as fast as they can. Some make it, some don't. You're ordered to hold your position, to keep your eyes on the tree line, and you do it even when you hear screaming. You learn not to trust faces. Not because everyone is against you, but because trust here is a luxury you can't afford. One wrong call, one wrong read on someone's intentions, and people get hurt. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's them. After a while, the civilians become part of the background. Another moving piece in a place that's already too full of danger. You nod when they nod, you pass without slowing, and you keep your weapon ready no matter what. It's not personal, it's survival. And when you leave a village behind, you don't look back. Because you know the next time you see it, if you ever do, it might not be there anymore. Out here, the only thing you can really count on is that nothing ever goes exactly the way you expect. The jungle doesn't work on your schedule, and neither does the war. You can plan a patrol down to the minute, rehearse every movement, know the terrain as well as the back of your hand, and still end up face first in something you didn't see coming. Surprises don't always start with gunfire. Sometimes it's just a sound that doesn't fit. Too sharp, too heavy, too close. You freeze, your squad freezes, and every sense you've got is straining to figure out what it means. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. You don't get long to decide. Booby traps are the kind of surprise no one forgets. A patch of ground that looks just like any other until someone steps on it and the air turns into fire and shrapnel. A tripwire you didn't see because it was strung ankle high and hidden under leaves. 1 second you're walking, the next there's a blast, a scream, and the acrid stink of explosives hanging over the mud. You check yourself first, then the guy next to you, then whoever's on the ground. Sometimes you can help, sometimes you can't. The jungle itself has its own tricks. Heavy rains turn a shallow stream into a rushing current that sweeps away gear and people before you even get a chance to cross. A slope you climbed yesterday turns into a mudslide today, sending you and everything you're carrying down in a choking, sliding mess. Trees come down without warning, crashing hard enough to flatten anything in their path. Wildlife counts too. You might spot a snake curled on a low branch, or you might not see it until it's too late. Leeches drop from above without you noticing. Spiders crawl into your gear during the night. Most of it isn't deadly, but out here, even a bite that just slows you down can be enough to tip the balance the wrong way. And then there are the human surprises. Walking into a village you thought was empty only to find it full of people who don't look happy to see you. Rounding a bend in the trail and finding an armed group coming the other way. Hearing movement on both sides of the path when you were told this area was clear. The kind of moments that make your pulse spike and your grip tighten on your rifle without even thinking about it. The real problem isn't that surprises happen, it's that they pile up. You deal with one, you adjust, you move on, and then another one hits. The ground you thought was safe yesterday isn't safe today. The route you cleared gets blocked. The weather shifts. The intel changes. You learn to adapt fast, not because you want to, but because the alternative is staying stuck in a situation that's already gone bad. Out here, surviving isn't just about staying alive through the big moments. It's about reacting fast to the small ones, the things that could spiral if you don't handle them right. A sound in the brush, a missing piece of gear, a sudden order to move when you are finally starting to rest. You don't fight the surprises. You expect them. You live with them. You let them shape the way you move, the way you think, the way you stay ready. And even then, some of them will still catch you off guard. The idea of going home is always there, sitting somewhere in the back of your head. It's not a picture-perfect dream. You don't see yourself stepping off a plane to cheers and banners. It's smaller than that. It's dry clothes. It's a bed that isn't dug into the earth. It's waking up without the sound of insects in your ears or the feel of a rifle against your chest. It's eating food that doesn't come wrapped in a banana leaf or out of a dented can. But out here, going home isn't a given. You can't count the days down on a calendar. You don't know when it's coming, or if it's coming at all. Every day you spend in the jungle, you're reminded how many ways there are not to make it back. Bullets, traps, sickness, the jungle itself. They don't care about your plans. You hear stories from guys who've been here longer. The ones who were supposed to leave months ago, but got pulled into another mission. The ones who were days away from heading out and didn't survive the week. The ones whose bodies went home long before they did. It's enough to make you stop thinking about dates altogether. When you do think about home, it's in flashes. You picture walking streets that don't end in mud, hearing voices that don't carry orders, seeing faces that don't belong to the people you've been sleeping next to in foxholes. You imagine the smell of coffee, the sound of a door closing softly instead of a rifle bolt snapping shut. Sometimes it makes you smile for a second. Sometimes it just makes the days feel longer. You don't talk about it much with the others. Out here, talking about going home feels like tempting fate. You might mention it in passing, a quick "when this is over" or "first thing I'm doing," but it's always half a joke, half a dare. No one wants to be the guy making plans for a life he might not get to live. And if you do make it, you wonder what home will even feel like after this. You've spent so long listening for danger in every rustle, smelling gunpowder in every shift of the wind, watching the ground before every step. Will you be able to walk down a street without scanning the rooftops? Will you be able to hear fireworks without ducking for cover? Will you be able to sleep without your boots on? You tell yourself you'll figure it out when the time comes. But for now, going home is just an idea you carry with you, like an extra piece of gear you can't put down. It's light enough to bear most days, heavy enough to hurt on others, and always there, whether you talk about it or not. And until it's real, you keep doing what you've been doing since the day you got here, putting one foot in front of the other, keeping your weapon ready, and hoping you get the chance to see what life looks like after the jungle. That's it for tonight's walk through a place most people only know from grainy footage and old photographs. Out here, nothing was simple, nothing was clean, and nothing waited for you to catch your breath. If you learned anything from this, it's probably that surviving it wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about adapting to whatever came next, whether it made sense or not. If you're still here, thanks for sticking with me through the heat, the rain, the mud, and everything else this war threw at the people who lived it. I hope it gave you a clearer picture of what it really meant to be out there, far away from home, where every day was its own kind of battle. If you like this, you know what to do. Drop a comment, hit the like button, share it with someone who'd get something out of it. And if you didn't, well, thanks for giving it your time anyway. Either way, I'll see you in the next one. Now, get some rest.